If the biggest question around the United States was whether they could function without Christian Pulisic, this match gave a very clear answer. They didn't just survive against Australia, they controlled the game, won 2-0, secured first place in Group D, and in the process changed the conversation around this team completely, because this was about more than 3 points. This was about identity. Coming into the tournament, the United States was still being judged as a talented side that hadn't always shown consistency. Now, 2 games in, it's 2 wins, top spot in the group, and a piece of history as well. The first time since the 1930 World Cup that the United States has opened a tournament with consecutive victories. That matters, not just because of the record, but because of how those wins have come. One match was driven more by attacking quality and moments of creativity. This one was built on pressure, organization, and collective discipline. That's what makes this result so important, and Australia were not supposed to be easy to manage here. They came in with confidence after winning their opening game, but from the first whistle, the Americans imposed themselves. The United States established territorial control early, pushed Australia backward, and dictated the tempo of the match for long stretches. That early phase told you a lot. Australia never really looked comfortable, never looked settled, and never got the kind of start that allows a team to grow into the game. The foundation for that was the press. Tactically, this was probably the clearest expression yet of what the United States wanted to be. Their pressing structure disrupted Australia's build-up repeatedly. The American attackers didn't just chase the ball, they closed passing lanes, forced rush decisions, and turned Australia's defensive third into an uncomfortable place to play. And that's the key point with an aggressive press. It doesn't only create turnovers, it changes the emotional temperature of the game. When a team keeps winning the ball high, the opponent starts to rush even simple actions. Possession stops feeling like control and starts feeling like pressure. That's exactly what happened to Australia. They were pushed into reactive football for much of the match. What made it even more impressive was that the United States managed all of this without leaning on one obvious attacking reference point. With Pulisic unavailable, there was every reason to wonder where the attacking spark would come from and whether the Americans would become easier to read. Instead, the opposite happened. The responsibility was spread across the front line and midfield. The movement looked more fluid. Players rotated positions well. Runners attacked space aggressively. The attack became less predictable because it wasn't flowing through one star profile. And sometimes that's one of the hidden benefits of losing a major player temporarily. It forces a team to solve different problems. It demands collective solutions instead of individual rescue acts. The United States may have discovered something valuable here because this performance suggested they can create danger in multiple ways. In tournament football, that kind of flexibility is incredibly important. Opponents can prepare for a superstar. It's much harder to prepare for a team where the structure itself is the threat. Then there was the defensive side, and that may be the most encouraging part of all. Australia had moments of possession, but very rarely did it feel like they were truly opening the Americans up. The United States defended with maturity. The backline stayed compact. The midfield tracked runners. Transitions were handled with control. And for a young squad, that's a major sign of development. Tournament matches are rarely played in one emotional rhythm for 90 minutes. Momentum shifts. Pressure builds. Opponents have spells. What matters is whether a team loses its shape in those moments. The United States didn't. That clean sheet was not really about one dramatic defensive intervention or one player bailing the team out. It reflected a unit defending together. Communication looked strong. Positioning was disciplined. Australia rarely found consistent space between the lines, and that is one of the best indicators of a well-coached, switched-on defensive performance. When the spaces stay small, the opponent starts forcing passes that aren't really there. Again, that's not just defending, that's control. And in the middle of it all, the American midfield deserves enormous credit. This game was won in many places, but a huge part of it was won in central areas. The United States controlled second balls, protected the defense, and supported the press constantly. That combination is what turns a good pressing idea into an effective one. If the midfield isn't alert behind the first line, the opponent can play through pressure and suddenly the whole structure is exposed. That never really developed here. The midfield kept the team connected. This is why winning midfield battles matters so much in the group stage. It's often the difference between a team that simply survives and a team that starts to look like a real knockout round threat. Against Australia, the United States looked like the second kind of team. There were several moments that really defined the match. The first was the opening phase itself. The Americans pushed the game into Australia's half immediately, and that early dominance created belief. It also removed any sense that this would become the kind of physical, scrappy contest Australia traditionally enjoys. Then came the duel battle. Australia usually thrives when matches become confrontational and direct, but the United States matched that intensity and then went beyond it. Once the Americans started winning duels and second balls consistently, the balance of the game shifted heavily in their favor, and maybe the most revealing turning point came after the United States took the lead. Young teams often lose control of matches in that moment. They score, drop emotionally, and invite pressure. The United States did the opposite. They remained organized, kept pressing intelligently, and never really allowed Australia to build sustained momentum. That shows maturity. It shows an understanding of game management. And later in the tournament, when margins get thinner and pressure gets heavier, that quality could become one of their biggest strengths. The squad depth story matters too. Some of the biggest winners from this game were the players asked to do more because Pulisic was out. They stepped into larger roles and responded. That matters enormously in a month-long tournament. Group winners are not usually decided by 11 players alone. They are decided by whether the squad can absorb absences, manage physical demands, and maintain performance levels without losing its identity. The United States showed more depth here than many people expected. So what does this result really mean going forward? First, the obvious part. Progression is secured and top spot in Group D is secured. That changes the management of everything. Minutes can now be handled more carefully. Players dealing with minor injuries or disciplinary concerns can be protected, and Pulisic's situation becomes even more significant in that context. If he is not fully fit, there is no real need to force the issue. A healthy Pulisic for the knockout rounds is far more valuable than unnecessary risk in a match with reduced stakes. But beyond squad management, the bigger shift is perception. Before the tournament, opponents may have looked at the United States and seen a talented but inexperienced team. After 2 convincing wins, that image becomes harder to hold. Now they look like a side that can press aggressively, defend compactly, and win without depending entirely on one superstar. That is a difficult profile to prepare for because it means there isn't one single switch an opponent can turn off. And that's why this performance sends a message beyond the group table. The United States didn't just beat Australia. They demonstrated adaptability, they demonstrated depth, and maybe most importantly, they demonstrated maturity. Winning when your star is available tells one story. Winning comfortably without him tells a much more interesting one. Are they tournament favorites? Not yet. Nothing in the group stage alone should push the conversation that far. But have they started to look like one of the more dangerous teams heading into the knockout rounds? Absolutely. What we learned from this match is that the United States are becoming more than a promising side with talent. They are starting to look like a team with solutions, and in tournament football, that may be the most valuable thing of all. The result was deserved, the control was real, and the statement was clear. The group stage has given them belief. Now comes the phase where belief has to survive pressure, and for the first time in a long time, the United States look ready for that test.